Okay, good afternoon, teachers and TAs. Thank you for taking time out to attend the event today. Usually we have our beloved Professor Gao Zhenyu to do the opening, but he has some other prior commitments, so I'll be subbing in today. Okay, so before we begin, I would like to do a quick announcement. There are two things. First is that our EMI Teaching Skills Enhancement Awards are now open for applications for EMI instructors. So if you're interested, remember to check out our official website. And if you want to know where our official website is, the easiest way is probably do a little keyword search, typing in the words NTUSD or BEI. You should be able to go to our official website and you will be able to find more details regarding how to apply for it. And the second announcement is more for the TAs. If you are interested in applying for the Outstanding and Excellent EMI TA Awards, you can also scan the QR codes there. Okay, so now I would like to say it is a great honor to introduce our speaker today, Kelley McArthur-Bothwell. She is one of our EMI consultants, especially for instructors from Fulbright. And she brings over a decade of teaching experience herself and many years of experience in teacher training. And we all know that teaching EMI courses is a huge challenge where we need to teach academic and professional subjects in our non-native language. So having great communicative skills is going to be very useful. So that's what Kelley is going to share with us today. So now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Kelley.
Hi. Oh, it's working. That's great. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's my honor, truly. You are all the experts in your field, and I know you're all extremely busy. So thank you for taking the time out of your day. If you haven't had the chance yet to do our do now, which is just some educational lingo for something you do now upon arrival, please go ahead and do it. This is something I've done with students who are children, with adults, with college students. I like to have something that students know they have to do upon arrival so that when we have a varied, entry of students, that they have something to do when they sit down that is related maybe to that day's class or that activity, and it gives them some structure and some informal English practice. And so that's what we're doing today. So you just need to submit 3 separate words to describe your teaching style. I see that interactive is very prominent. So also a note for my workshops, if you have not attended, sometimes I like to make them a little meta. So that means that the things that we're trying to practice today, communicative methods and interactive methods, I will be asking you to engage just to, do some practice and, kind of model what our students do. So everything that I do, I hope that it could be applied to your classes as well. So if you feel like, why am I doing this? Hopefully it could be applicable in your future classes. If you would like. Okay, this is great. Interactive, creative, digital, AI. I love it. So much variety. Would anyone like to share anything why you chose any of the words you chose? Real. Okay. Well, we could talk more. Oh, well, this is just a warm up. You guys can get warmed up. Okay, so I'm going to be switching back and forth between Mentimeter and my PowerPoint. Okay, so today the workshop we're doing is classroom interaction, communicative strategies for developing the 4 skills. And really, we're going to be talking about mostly speaking and listening. As maybe you've discovered that your students are pretty good at reading and writing. But we're going to talk about the integrative ways we can use all those skills in our classes. Okay, so this is me. I'm Kelley McArthur-Bothwell. I've been here in Taiwan since August. Taiwan is the easiest safest country I've ever lived in, including the United States. So it's such a pleasure to be here. I never get sick of the food. So a little bit about my background. I have a master's in education from Johns Hopkins. I was specializing in special education and differentiation, and then also early childhood and elementary. And then I taught in the DC public schools for 3 years. This is kind of, okay. So my education, master's in education, Johns Hopkins. Then I had a master's in applied linguistics as well from Ohio University, focusing on language teaching and application of that. So before I was here in Taiwan, I was in North Africa. I was in Algeria for 2 years. I was doing teacher training there for pre and in-service teachers. They have a similar model to Taiwan, where they're trying to also have a dual language situation, especially in their education program. So I was doing that, and that was great. I ate some amazing bread and olive oil. And then before that, I was in DC. I was doing this teacher training program myself. And then I was teaching in the DC public schools. And then before that, I was in Ohio. I was in Athens, Ohio, which is the southern part of Ohio, if you're familiar. And I'm originally from Cleveland, the Cleveland area, like near where LeBron is from. But I was in Athens, Ohio for about 10 years. But during that time, I got my master's in applied linguistics, and then I was teaching ESP classes like business writing. I was teaching some EAP classes, teaching incoming Fulbright scholars. So I have taught pretty much the range of everyone from like 4 years old until like 50 years old, and above. Like I've taught everyone. And so, it's such a pleasure to be here with you today, and just to be amongst expert teachers as well. It's really a pleasure. So we already did our do now. Okay, so for our objectives today, hopefully what you will get out of this workshop. So you as the participants, hopefully will be able to identify the communicative practices that you're using already and the ones that you would like to increase in your classrooms. And then also, hopefully you'll be able to design some activities to increase authentic field-specific English speaking and listening practice, specifically speaking and listening because it seems that perhaps that's what we would like to increase in our Taiwanese classes from what I can have gathered so far. So our agenda is we did our do now, we did our objectives. So we're going to have a quick intro and background of the communicative strategies of communicative language teaching, background and justification for this in EMI courses, some classroom application, some takeaways from you, and any questions you might have. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my Mentimeter slides. Let's see here. Okay, so for our second slide, I'm gonna present. Oh, okay. Wait, I have to give you the QR code. Let's see it. Okay, cool. So, oh wait, hold on. I'm gonna move it. That's great. Okay, so for one of our intro slides, I want to sort of survey you on the ways your students are communicating in your classes. So you can choose they speak often, they are mostly listening, they are producing written content, and they are reading. I'm not sure if you can choose multiple of these, but you can. So it's just a rank. It's a ranking. Exactly. So you're going to rank the ones based on like how often they're doing from most to least. Okay. And then we're just going to see what's going on in our classes, just so I can get an understanding. Whoa. Okay. I'll give you a few minutes to do this, a couple minutes. Okay, interesting. Wow, so we have some speaking classes in here. Does anyone want to speak on that? Whose students are speaking a lot?
Because we will give them some exercise.
Oh, okay.
Some equation, some problem to solve. So they have to speak.
Here.
Okay, because we need to give them exercise to make sure they understand what they need to know. So they tend to need to discuss about some solution and then discuss about how to solve the questions. So they tend to speak and then present their ideas. I think this will help the teacher to get idea, because sometimes when you told them and then you think they understand, but probably they misunderstand the contents. So I think this will greatly help teaching. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, so you're doing that formative assessment, trying to gather what your students know and the gaps in their knowledge, so that's really useful. Anybody else? Who else has students who are speaking a lot? Okay. Coming to you. Okay.
So I work with a class of master's students, so they have further knowledge in reading materials. So they have assigned reading materials and they used to bring the discussion to the class. They do have some discussion online on the reading platform, but of course it's more alive when there is inside classroom discussion. So then they can connect their experience to what they have already written and also their critical insights into the readings.
Okay, and how big is your class?
They are 14 students.
Okay, cool. That's helpful to know. Yeah, that's great that you're having them speak in class. How big was your class? 10. Okay. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so thank you for sharing. Okay, so this one is an open-ended question. So just in what ways do you wish your students communicated more in class? So I'll give you a couple minutes to respond to this one. So we can think about maybe what our goals are for this workshop, your personal goals. Okay, I'll give you one more minute to respond. Don't be shy. Okay. These are some interesting responses. Okay, so we see a few active people on there seems to be more active. Someone said speak up. Let's see if I can use this pointer. Is this the pointer? No. How do I do? Oh, okay. Speak up more without the fear of making mistakes and relate the course materials to their own lives. Would anyone like to share their response, why they chose to share this? Okay. Ronnie, who can get there first? Yeah, that's good.
I taught speaking courses before, and usually for Asian students, they're really scared of speaking. So yeah, that's what I wish they. And I did ask them why they don't want to share their thoughts. Sometimes, mostly it's because they are afraid or they feel embarrassed to make mistakes.
Okay.
And I really wish that they would get the idea that communication is not about like being grammatically correct and
just speak up what they think and get their ideas across. That's the point.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Thank you very much. And I know even personally for me, speaking other languages, I feel also afraid of making mistakes. So I think that's very common, yeah. But also whenever, I meet people here and they're like, oh, my English is so bad. I'm like, do you want to hear my Chinese? It's really bad. So yeah, definitely. That's a struggle though. Okay, so people said when I need to know if they understand what I teach, they will give me responses. I hope they can be more active. That's great. Generally speaking, I wish they were able to express their doubts and make mistakes. Yeah, okay, so this person is saying, I wish students did make more mistakes, actually. That's a really good perspective, I think. We could think about how do we reward students for making mistakes. That's an interesting idea. As a professor, I don't know what this one is. As a professor, I deeply value engagement because it enhances learning for both students and instructors. Yeah, that's great. Okay, let me see, sharing important insights. Does anyone else want to share your thoughts, your ideas about what you'd like your students to communicate more about? Anybody? Okay. All right, okay. So then finally, for our final intro question, I'm curious if for all of you, so you are all professionals in your field, perhaps experts in your field, you can communicate in English in your field. And so I'm wondering, I just want you to maybe reflect on how you came to have the level that you have now. Like what types of experiences or what things caused you to be able to reach the level that your students would probably eventually need to reach. So sometimes I find, as an instructor, it can be hard to remember what it's like to be a student or to be in that in-between phase. Although I think perhaps we're all still, and maybe we're all still trying to grow, but I'm wondering if anyone is willing, if you're willing to share how you got to that communicative level. It could be a helpful exercise for us. So again, I'll just give you a few minutes and then we'll continue on. I love that. We say we fake it till we make it. And we have good states. So sometimes you just have to pretend. Okay, watch YouTube videos or others present. Thank you for being brave and sharing. Get EMI trained. Stop. Stop. Don't butter me up. Okay, I had strong will to learn by reading aloud, practicing even with mistakes, listening to feedback, reading again. Okay, so it's like some trial and error. Speaking slowly and thinking before speaking. If only we all thought before we spoke, right? So yeah, that's great. Study abroad. Okay, yeah. Read literature in our field, watch a lot of movies and soap opera in English, love that. Learning by doing, through teaching, attending international conferences, and peer-reviewed publishing experiences. Let me take off the QR. Okay, would anyone like to share your thoughts? Maybe the person who said, I don't know if you're willing to share, when you said you pretend. I love that though. Or maybe that you had a strong will, or maybe, through attending international conferences. But I'm noticing a trend. This is like, we're going to talk about some of these things. Like this is almost like mock professional, like doing like a mock. We're going to talk about that, doing like mock interviews, mock like role playing type things like that. Like this is some Relia, this is also Relia, attending international conferences or studying abroad. Practicing at home by myself, watching some videos, learn how to speak, yeah. Practicing out loud, yeah. So we're gonna talk more about things like this. Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate it. Okay. Oh, wait, somebody said, read the classics. Discuss with different person. Oh, yeah, let me see. Oh my God, I can't use this computer. Okay. Discuss with different perspectives, deep dive into it. So I've also noticed that there was a lot about internal motivation, which is a huge aspect of your own interests and your own desires for using the language, like studying abroad or going to conferences. So yeah, okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the background and justification, because perhaps you're thinking to yourself, I don't care about this, and I just need my students to understand the material, which is also understandable, and you have a lot to do. So we're going to talk a little bit about the background and justification of communicative language in EMI. And so what is it, if you're not familiar? It's pretty, seems maybe straightforward, but it was started in the 80s, and it emphasized, it could be called communicative language teaching / the communicative approach. And it emphasizes student interaction as the means and the goal of classroom study. So the idea is really this student-centered practice, but that it's through interaction, through communication, that students are learning the subject, and it's also the goal of them doing the activity. So this might be different, again, than your EMI course, but we can just so we have some background of this practice. And so this includes communicating with the instructor and peers in the target language, and using authentic texts or relia in the target language, such as genuine reports, emails, podcasts, simulations, such as mock interviews or conferences, site visits, things like that. Okay, so the idea is that you are using like a real approach that, it's like, okay, how do we kind of mimic or actually put our students in these environments where they have to use the language authentically. And, okay, so I'm gonna try to get you guys to do it. Okay, so you can find somebody, talk to a group of one other person or two, you could be groups of 2 to 3, and you're going to discuss your answer to a question I'm going to share, and then I'm going to come around and ask you your answers, and then maybe some of you will share. Okay, so I'm wondering why maybe you as an instructor would want to use communicative language, or why a professor might choose to use communicative language practices in an EMI classroom. I think this is their only question. Okay. Okay, so I'll give you maybe 5 minutes to discuss. Okay, so you'll discuss with somebody next to you, why you might want to use these practices in your classroom. Okay, I have been alerted that perhaps this was, we need some clarification. So the question is just asking, why would you as an instructor want to use these practices in your classroom? So why the communicative language teaching, communicative approach, it's just these elements, right? Communicating with the instructor and peers in the target language. So in our case, it would be in English. And then it's also using these authentic texts or relia. Relia is like, you might show them like a real report. You might show them, like a video of something that really happened, or some sort of news report or something like that. So the question is just why, or you might take your students to a site visit, or you might have them, it depends on your field, okay? But the question is just why would you have students, why would you choose to use these practices in your in an EMI classroom specifically, right? Does anyone have an idea? What are you guys talking about over here? No. People are like, yeah. Okay, would you mind sharing? No?
We have no idea what because
okay.
He has teaching one English class and
Oh, okay.
she doesn't have any classes. So
Oh, okay.
kind of like
Just brainstorming. We're talking about it. Yeah, that's the purpose. That's the purpose. Does anyone feel comfortable sharing maybe a response? Why? Yeah?
Because I'm teaching mathematics and AI, so usually you have some fundamental knowledge or like equation, but students don't understand those equations can be applied to the project they are doing now. Most of my students are only graduate students, so they should be able to apply in their application, in their problems. But when they try to write out the paper, they kind of disconnect all the knowledge I get to you, to get to them. So we need to make sure, maybe in some weeks, we will make sure we give you this problem. This problem is basically the practical problem they are trying to deal with. And then they make sure they can understand, they can use those equations to those problems.
Like a real authentic problem.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Okay. And so why is that useful for your students?
Because they have to do thesis and they have to do project, they have to write research paper, they have to generate real research outputs. So they have to do it. So the course just give them foundation knowledge.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing. Okay, does anyone else think they could share something? All right.
I think maybe in that case, it may be by using the computer language practices, the kind of the maybe that way of the teaching can help the students to connect what they are currently learning with the context of the real world, so get them more kind of motivated to learn something.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. I'm just walking in stride.
I think we need to understand in this case Taiwan context. Taiwan wants to become bilingual by 2030, although that deadline is being postponed. Therefore, mastering English is very important, and that should be beyond the language itself. So learning materials, math, computer science, whatever subject through language, and it makes to kill two birds with one bullet. So you learn the subject and you learn it through the tool of language, in this case English. And by using a communicative approach, you don't fix on mistakes, grammar, like what Professor shared before. You focus on communicating ideas and understanding concepts and being able to apply them, like you will share before.
Thank you for sharing. Yes, that's beautiful. Anybody else want to share or have any questions? But hopefully we'll get some of the questions ironed out. Because I just wanted to give you a little bit of discovery time to think about, like, why would we want our students to communicate more in our classes, in our EMI classes, especially when you're focused on such intense things, right? Really heavy topics, or and you have a lot of stuff to get through. Okay, and so some reasons perhaps why you would use this communicative language approach in your classroom. Some reasons include it can increase authentic student practice using English as the medium of instruction in their respective fields. So what we were just talking about. So that can be a reason why. It's killing two birds with one bullet. So it's really getting, doing a lot of things at once, right? And not being so focused on the mistakes, but just on the actual communication, so crucial. And so this can prepare students for actually being employable in their fields, as you were saying, that they really have to produce. And I don't know if any of you know my colleague Nate, but he always says, who would you want to represent you? So like when your students will go out into the world, do you want them to be able to really communicate authentically? Like, probably yes, right? Because they're going to be representing your lab or you personally or the university, right? So it's thinking about, like, how are we really preparing the students for entry into the world? And but then it also allows for effective formative assessments, right? So as I think you were also talking about, and others have maybe talked about, how it allows you to really see. Formative assessments just means, like, it's it's not summative, it's not the total, but it's just they're forming their knowledge. And so it allows for you to understand, what do my students know currently, right now, in this class? What did they understand from today's lesson? And what are their gaps in knowledge? And so you can know what your students know and what the gaps are. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of a role play, which is also a communicative approach. And so we're going to simulate a classroom lecture environment. And I'm going to do this very briefly, because that's how much I don't like it. But sometimes you have to, right? So sometimes you have to. Okay, I don't think I'm gonna have you do this part though. I'm gonna just do it myself. So this was I just chose cybersecurity, okay? Because I personally am interested in cybersecurity. I think it's very interesting. And so if I were lecturing about cybersecurity, which I shouldn't be doing because I don't know enough about it, but if I were, I might say something like this. I might say, oh, it is crucial for states to identify and mitigate cybersecurity risks across multiple organizations. Hold on, I should stand over here, like behind this, This cross-organizational risk identification and mitigation is shared by the Chief Information Security Officer and the Military Department. The CISO focuses on risks to state networks, while the Military Department focuses on risks that impact critical infrastructure, which could require an emergency response. Is everyone awake? Okay, so I just did this little tiny mock traditional lecture, but I might ask students, say all of that, and I might say, do any of you have questions? Any questions? And everyone's gonna stay silent, right? Everyone's gonna be silent, because they're like, I don't even know the words that you just said, Okay. So in a traditional lecture, saying, just me lecturing at you and then being like, do you have any questions? And then having a silent room, I'm like, nobody's talking. Why aren't you talking? But instead, if we made it, how could we make it more communicative? How could we change it? Okay, so I want you to think maybe with a partner in your groups. We're going to take 2 minutes. Okay, first we're going to do a think, pair, share activity. Does anybody do think, pair, share? Yes, he's nodding over there. Think, pair, share. Anybody? So the idea is you're just going to think by yourself. Okay, in Algeria, I'd always have to we had the opposite problem where I'd have to tell everyone, be quiet, no talking. So here we have to switch it. But okay, so first we're going to take 2 minutes or 1 minute, think to ourselves how you would make this activity more communicative. So how would you make this lecture style, and me just asking, do you have any questions? How would you make it more communicative? Then you'll work with a partner for 5 minutes and talk about how you'd make it more communicative, and then we'll share together. Okay. So just take a couple minutes, write down some ideas maybe of how you would make this activity more communicative as an instructor, even if you don't know anything about cybersecurity, it doesn't matter. And then you will share together. Okay, do we feel ready to share? Okay, all right, so you'll just take about 5 minutes and share with some people near you, 1 to 2 people near you, and then we'll share out. Yeah, like you
She's asking how can you make
That's a good idea. I like how the idea of having What are your thoughts?
And then we'll talk about I will ask them to recall
Yeah.
here we go.
Yeah, and exhausting. Well, that's good. So you have them like read something. Have that second half. Okay. Yeah. How much time do they usually have to like read? So it's like they plan it ahead. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, that's great. That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Do you guys mind sharing? No. It's so funny. I'm working with teachers that
Then we read this.
and then the professors honestly. But then me?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm studying. Oh, thank you. That's so funny. Yeah, I know. So I think it's That's so funny. I was a poster. That's so funny. Wow. That's so funny. What EMI class did you teach?
Your lecture. Okay, yeah. I mean, you know some students wait 5 seconds and then the teacher will answer.
Yes, that's why I think they will think about it. Okay, so I need to set up the scoring system and then do the classification and prioritize the problems and like provide everybody style 1995.
Do you have
Okay, next. Okay.
But I know 4 is a lot. I know 4 is a lot. Sometimes start to work, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Triple C. I don't know how I Thank you so much.
One of the best six, 7, 8 years ago. Just in case some trouble but they still wait till the buzzer or the bell rings and then come to me one on one. Why didn't you ask? Probably okay then. That's what we did. But it's constantly when you say because it's not kind of so weird because for example, you ask a question and you want to choose to answer graduation, so which means that and many students what you want to feel about making a friend.
Okay, so I love that everyone's very chatty. It's beautiful, very communicative. So I was over here listening to what was going on, but I'm sure there's much good talk happening as well. So there was some discussion over here of instead of having students just listen to a lecture, that you could have them do some role playing themselves, and you could break them into groups, and you could even assign them manager positions or different positions where they would have to solve a certain problem. We were also talking about the difficulty with, if we're talking about communication and you give a lecture and then just only a few students or a couple students ask a question, that maybe none of the other students are engaging. And so we talked about the importance of having students in small groups so that they are talking to one another, that there are more students who get a chance to communicate. Did anyone have any thoughts over here that they want to share? It wasn't over here in this section. Okay. Yes, please. We'll stay in my place.
So I think first we can ask students to identify what kind of a cross-organization risk is. So asking is the first question, and I saw the third sentence is about classifying how urgent this risk is. So we'll ask students, apart from brainstorming about what kind of risk it can be, and also try to score or rank how urgent this risk can be, and design a risk reporting system. So and then think about the detailed mechanism, so it will become an exercise in practice.
Yes, that's great. Thank you for sharing. We were talking about having students kind of like explore the answers to the problem themselves, which I think is very effective and creates a more authentic communication environment. And we have to think about, right, communication, it isn't just speaking, but it is also listening and understanding and responding and also writing. And so we can think about, some of you, I was like, coming up and saying like, would you be willing to share? People didn't want to share. And so I think and that's okay too, I think understanding that everyone has a spectrum of comfort when it comes to sharing in class, and so building those environments where people can just share amongst themselves, or they can write, or different things like that. Anybody else want to share over here? Your thoughts? I know the wait time, I learned like the wait time sometimes in this part of the world is like 7 seconds. Oh, we have someone who wants to share. Okay, all right.
Okay, so we discussed we could start by separating the focus of the two groups here. So the state networks and the critical infrastructure, give some simple examples for them to understand what will be related to them. And then they will have different groups having different positions and debating about some conflicting issues. For example, in terms of there is an attack from China right here in Taiwan context, and there is an electricity issue, how these two agencies will try to be in control of this, and what would be their limitations and process of action, and so they need to make their positions.
That's interesting. So I think creating a more authentic context, right, which maybe could even be relatable to some of the students in the room would be very interesting. And we also talked about over here, we were talking about how introducing new concepts sometimes requires more, you have to really give students more examples in order for them to be able to engage. Similar to when I gave you the question and everyone was like, no, I don't understand, and I had to go over it again because I thought, oh wait, I didn't really explain this well enough, right? And so I think, giving more examples, making it authentic, makes it more accessible, which is really great. Okay, thank you for sharing. Any final thoughts? Oh, okay.
Maybe it depends on the background of this kind of lesson a little bit, depends how much the students know and don't know.
Sure.
And whether the focus is language, maybe I can kind of break it down a little bit. If it's language focus, where we can talk about scaffolding a little bit, where we can build on the language, what is security, the basic idea of that, before we jump into the heavy things, and background knowledge. That's what I love to do in my classes. First, I want to see what they know about the topic. Maybe they what the security risk they've experienced on their own. They can share from that experience, and then kind of build upon it, and then use real world examples. What kind of take steps a little bit, but at the end of the day, you have to really understand how far you're in the lesson. From there. Maybe they know everything about the cybersecurity, the mediations, the CSO and CISO and so on.
No, that's such a great point, like that you have to really build on everything before they could even access this type of content. So that's very useful. Thank you for sharing. Okay. All right. And we're back in business. Okay, so I hope you had a nice break. So now we're going to move on to classroom application. So many of you are already doing lots of communicative things in your classrooms, but we're just going to go over some other things that you could possibly add or try, or maybe you've already done some of these things. So I love a chart. If you've ever met me, you've seen a chart. Okay, so I know that many of you, hold on, I'm going to go back so you're not just reading that and not listening to me. So I know many of you are very busy. You have a lot of content to get through. It's very important. It's English is not the purpose, right, of your classes. It's not for your students to become better at grammar, but the purpose is for them to learn the content, learn the skills, whatever it is you need them to learn. So I came up with a chart that has varied timed activities. So some of them are fewer than 5 minutes. Some of them are 5 to 10 minutes. Some of them are 15 to 30. So we're going to take a look at those. And I'm going to talk about just a few of them. But you can see here, this is this chart. And some of them are self-explanatory, okay? So we have this fewer than 5-minute time commitment. So it's just solve this problem or equation. That's what it sounds like. You just give them a problem or equation at some point, maybe at the beginning of class, you have them solve it. It's just a quick activity for them to practice. Maybe you have them practice talking about it with a classmate, right? So they practice using English. You can do a want to know, learned chart, and you could frame it in a different way. This is a type of chart where you would write at the beginning of class, you'd have like a big chart, you'd use, maybe a projector, and you'd type in, or maybe have students use Mentimeter, and they would write what they know about the topic that you're presenting that day. Like for instance, when we were talking about cybersecurity, you might have them write down what they know about cybersecurity, and then maybe what they want to know about cybersecurity. And then at the end, it would be like what they learned. And you could frame it as like, okay, imagine you're a beginner, you've just been hired to this position. You could frame it in a more like authentic way if you want, but you could also just use that activity as a quick, it's like a formative assessment tool, basically, a metacognitive strategy, so students are thinking about their learning, and then you also get to know more about what they know. You could also have them do speed interviews, we're going to talk more about that. Okay, so then we have a 5 to 10 minute time commitment. You could have them do a case study evaluation. Again, it's what it sounds like. You give them a case study, you have them evaluate it with a classmate, and then they maybe talk about it. You could extend this as well to be longer. This activity, and email your professor, an end of class activity. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but it's a way to use like an authentic professional tool to have students practice using professional language and the language of the target language for the field. And then information gap. Students communicate to fill in the gaps. We'll talk more about that. Then we have this 15 to 30 minute time commitment. You could have them do mock workplace interactions, like trying to figure out how to handle a disaster in the workplace, or negotiating among different people, or conflict resolution. You could have students do different types of debates, which has been very useful for me, especially for students who are maybe less common, like they won't talk as much. Having them do like a structured debate can sometimes feel safer for students. And then you could have students do a mock poster presentation, which we're going to, again, talk more about. Okay, so for this first one, we have speed interviews, okay? So this is a fewer than 5 minute time commitment. And so how it works is students, they create, or, is this one? Okay, yeah, they create or are given questions to review prior topics. And student A acts as an interviewer, student B as the interviewee. Student B gets 2 minutes to respond to questions, and then the students switch. And each student gives each other 30 seconds of feedback. So this could be a review activity that you could have students do, where at the beginning of class you're like, okay, we're gonna do speed interviews, similar to if you're familiar with speed dating, okay, and you have them all lined up, and then you have them just interview each other rapidly. And so the purpose is that students would practice language quickly, so that again, the goal is not perfection, it is communication. And so you could have them communicate and review certain topics that they should already know, and so it really helps them practice English in that, in their field. And so, it provides varied opportunity for language use, like listening and speaking. And it allows for you also to evaluate student understanding and learning. So you can also get a sense like, oh, they have no idea what they're talking about. Like, I have to reteach this. Or like, oh, they're really on target. They really understand. And so, or like maybe you're like, oh, it seems like they understand, but the communication is not there, and we need to work on that. Okay, and so, so real quickly, we're gonna share how maybe if this could work in your subject area. So I'll just give you like 1 minute. We'll just do this really fast, like a speed interview, okay? And just you're gonna talk about how could this work in your subject area, and maybe what's a barrier for you in your classes, like what's a barrier for this type of activity, and maybe what a workaround would be to any potential issues. So again, you're gonna talk about this, this speed interview, if this could work for you in your classes, and if not, what are the types of issues you envision for your class and how you could potentially solve them. So I'll give you about 3 minutes to do this, and then we will discuss. Here are our questions. Who understands what we're going to do? Do we understand?
we're going to talk to each other.
Yeah.
Then one is like an interviewer and the other is an interview.
Well, we're just going to talk about if this would work in our classes. Like if you doing that type of interview activity would work for your EMI classes. Thank you for clarifying, because sometimes can be a fire hose of information. I'm giving people too much information. So yeah, so we're just going to talk about if this would work in our EMI classes.
No.
Okay. He says no. He says no. So you don't think it would work?
I usually ask, let's recap what we learned last week.
Okay.
Then everyone went blank.
Yes, definitely.
Then I begin to talk what we covered last week. So what are we gonna do? I mean, if we ask them to interview about what happening last week, maybe they just went blank.
Okay, how many thinks your students will have no idea what to say? They will not know. I saw some look of recognition in people's eyes. They will cheat.
Yes, because I tried this in my class. They
Okay.
will cheat. I try because when they all do team presentation, right? So I ask, when this team do presentation, other team need to ask questions.
Yeah.
So this is like interview. And they end up with all will ask general questions. What's the limitation of this method? This will apply to any papers.
Wow.
So they will just cheat and they are not really listening about the presentation they are talking about. For example, like what kind of method, what the behavior of this method. They are not asking the details. They are just raising some general questions. So it's like cheating. But I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to make this work.
Sure.
Maybe I want to listen to
Okay.
you.
Okay. Does anyone have any ideas of how this could potentially work? So the idea is that at the beginning of class, you have a do now. And students, maybe you give them slips of paper, right? One of them has a slip of paper. It has a certain question about your field. Like, can anybody think of a quick question? Did I include? I don't think I include. No, I didn't. Okay. So like maybe if we're going back to cybersecurity, right? You'd have a student that has a question like, who is responsible for this cybersecurity method, and then the other and why, and the other student has to answer quickly, right? So the idea is that they would just have to go back and forth. It'd be like rapid fire, okay? But you say they might cheat. You say they won't know. So what is a way we could maybe make it so that students actually are answering authentically? Any thoughts?
We put the outline of last week. So to remind them about like what they may recall their memory.
Yeah, so putting the outline of the prior week. Yeah, why not?
Usually when they come to the classroom, they just rush into it and then do their breakfast or lunch,
Sure.
whatever. So maybe just put the outline of last week's stuff. Maybe it will help them to ask the question or answer.
I think that's a great idea, because that could be the do now, right? That you have the outline, they have to review the outline, and you tell them in a couple minutes you're going to be interviewed by your partner. And somebody said, I don't know if at some point they need some sort of motivation. So maybe they get extra points, or they need some motivation to do it, And so maybe they get participation points or something like that, or you let them leave class early or something that, they get some benefit. And but I think having them, finish their breakfast and review before doing that can be effective. Yes, over here.
So what I try to do is I always try to explain to them that there's no one and right way to do stuff, especially in their presentations or whatever activity they're doing. So I ask them, what would they do different, better, that suit them better, without the idea of criticizing the partner, but it's like finding what it would be like a middle ground. Maybe, I like what the person did. I never thought about it. I would have done maybe this different. And they always have very interesting ideas. They actually normally praise the strength of the partner, and they point out their limitations and how they feel they could improve based on the experience of the others.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, that's a really good idea. And also, that's the element of like giving the feedback that I think I had mentioned, like having the 30 seconds of feedback. Something that also could be maybe more authentic is you're giving them like IELTS questions or something, or you're giving them some sort of, or like, there's some sort of like interview questions. They're like interviewing for jobs, or maybe there's something related to like authentic tasks that, oh, this is like going to be a question that, you know, some of these questions might be on your exam, right? And in prior workshops, if you've been to any of them, my colleague Nate has talked a lot about students using ChatGPT to cheat, which you were discussing, just that they cheat or they're not really thinking critically. And so I think having that element of letting students have some research time, some like time to like, okay, yeah, maybe I can, you know, you say, okay, you can use, we'll have this on the board for 5 minutes, or you can use your phone for 5 minutes before, you know, to review, and then you put it down, and then we'll just share, you know, authentically, can be useful, right? So I think thinking of these different creative strategies can be helpful. Okay, I'll move on. All right, so now we have this activity called Email Your Professor. So this can enable students to practice professional and field-specific English while also providing a formative assessment. I was teaching international, okay, brain, turn on. Okay, so when I was in Algeria, I was teaching future teachers, and I had to teach them how to teach writing, okay? And so I'm in a room full of like freshmen, 19-year-olds, some of them were 18, 17, and I asked them to raise their hand. How many of you have ever sent an email? And after I picked myself up off of the floor, because like 3 of them raised their hands, you know, I had this whole email workshop where I taught them how to write professional emails. And some of them, like, I wouldn't let them leave class. They had to send me an email before they left class, and some of them, like, took them forever. They kept misspelling my email address. They'd be like, no, I really wrote it. I'm like, no, that's not right. You have to send it to me, you know? And so it was really funny. But I think this can be a helpful way to, you know, have students really practice this professional, you know, it's a professional context. I mean, it's possible they could use ChatGPT, but I think if you have them do it in class, that can be a way to get them to really write it themselves. And so you could have students send you an email at the end of class to explain one unclear aspect of that day's lesson using professional language as if they are like reporting to a manager or something, right? And so I've also read in some literature that it really helps if you want to have a more authentic classroom environment, that you could even frame yourself as the instructor as like their manager, that you're in a workplace setting, and that would vary depending on your class, but that can be sometimes a helpful reframe for students, like, okay, how would I be speaking or communicating with a manager if they're my boss, you know? And so the purpose is it helps students to clarify their thoughts, and it allows you to have a quick informal assessment of their knowledge, and it can also serve as a way for, for attendance. Like, you know, you probably, you know, gather attendance in some other way. But I think just having that record of student knowledge can be useful. You'll have to be cleaning out your email more, but I think that it can be a more authentic task, and they have to practice that. It can, you know, I think it can be useful. So I guess we can just, and then you can also, if you want to extend that activity, you can have students share with a partner what they learned or what questions they have. And again, I think really emphasizing whoever said to reward students for mistakes, reward students for taking risks, having them share something they don't understand, hopefully is, you know, would be encouraged, and they'd be encouraged to really share what they don't know. Okay, and so I was thinking that we could maybe design a version of this, but I guess we can also just talk about it. So I don't know if anyone would have any ideas of like how you might use this activity in your class. So you can think about it. How might you design your own version of the Email Your Professor based on your field or your EMI class?
This is what I will try to ask my student to do it, because sometimes I receive an email with like unprofessional and unpolitely, and even no names or something like that. So I think if I do this, I never tried this, but if I try this, I will maybe ask them to use in ChatGPT and send me both. One is the original, and the other one is sent to the professor or sent to the manager, and compare the difference between it. I mean, because that might tell something. Because the student might, they might think this is a good way to communicate with the professor or just like their friend.
Yeah.
But it could be miss some important information. So at this time, I think the ChatGPT work, but I think they need to provide both the original and the one after ChatGPT for both. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I love that use of ChatGPT. I think teaching students how to use ChatGPT effectively, or using it in ways where it can help students have a more clear picture of like, this is what an email format is. Yeah, is very useful. So I think it's incredible. I'm like, I've never felt older than students emailing me nonsense and being like, how did no one teach you? How have you not learned how to write emails? So yeah, I think sometimes it ends up becoming our job somehow, which is, it's not always great, but yeah, that's a really, really effective way. I love that. Any other thoughts of like how you might adapt this?
I want to integrate this into the previous one, the interview one, because the interview one is talking about interactive, right? And then when I talk about student might ask general question, maybe I can change to student need to ask question in the class and also submit a report about the other things presentation. So they have a written record. Then they have to engage in listen carefully about other things presentation. So maybe I can change to this.
Oh, that's a great idea. So having your students submit a written report through email about the presentation, and that's something they can't use ChatGPT for, so that's amazing. Yeah, I love that. That's a really good idea. Any other thoughts about how you might use this in your class? All right, well, let me know if you do. I'd be interested.
Quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, in a perfect scenario, we would love all the students to write us an email. For example, like a keep it over here where we have very nice details about outlining what kind of problem or difficulty you have throughout the class.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. What happens if, let's say, half of the class just says, nope, all cool, and just send you an email? They have done their work because you asked them to write an email. There's no any content in it, and you cannot really tell them, like, wait a second, you didn't say anything. Like, no, I just said everything. But then how would you tackle that? Because I know it definitely will happen.
Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah, of course. Oh, I have no problems. I have no issues. I guess making it a requirement, right, that you have to tell me the most unclear point from today. And the answer cannot be you have no unclear points, So I guess being explicit about that, and then maybe if you can make it some sort of like you don't get participation points if you don't include that, or having some sort of motivation, yeah. I guess that would be a way to do it, connecting it to points.
And in my mind, I would always think about how they would argue, like,
Yeah.
I understood everything. Why do I have to come up with something? That means I'm lying to you. That means I'm fabricating something.
Yeah, okay. Sure. Yeah, and that makes sense.
I'm not building a retort with them.
No, you're right, that's true. And I guess, like if you don't feel like this would be an effective, method for your class, that makes sense. And I think also though, some of it is selling the activities to students. It's like, okay, this is actually a metacognitive strategy that can help you in the long run. And, and then also connecting it to points. But I also have found, especially in lecture-based classes or very or lecture-based societies where students are used to just sitting and listening, kind of getting that student buy-in is crucial, because otherwise they're not going to do it, and they're going to think it's weird, and they're going to think you're lazy as the professor to make them do a bunch of work when they're like, I came to class, what do you want me to do? So yeah, I think maybe trying to get that buy-in and then also connecting it to points can be useful. Does that make sense? Okay, yeah. Yeah.
But if they understand all, they can definitely summarize today's activity.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So we ask them to summarize today's activity.
Have them summarize. But again, telling them why they'd be doing that, I think is really important. Being like, this is a metacognitive strategy. For you, it will, increase your retention of this material. It will make it, stick in your brain more, and it's actually more effective for you long term. And maybe, having some argument for why that could be useful. You might have to do that at the beginning of the year even. If you're going to practice these, do more student-centered practices, you'll have to convince students it's worth their time. if they're not used to it. So yeah.
I think what you mentioned is very, very important because if you just say, okay, write me an email, 90% of them, well, I should not say 90, but a big chunk of them would be AI generated, where they will just have perfect English.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. But then if you clarify, wait a second, I know some people encourage this ChatGPT, but I encourage you just try your best, make mistakes, send me an email, that you know from your heart.
Yeah.
It actually works. I mean, you still get a couple of bad ones, but
definitely. I think like even somehow like giving them points for the different, even if you can tell it's their own writing, that you give them extra points for that. It was so funny, like students would all the time write in ChatGPT and write it down on paper and bring it into class. Like I was in Algeria, we were writing essays, and I would tell them like, this is ChatGPT, and they'd be like, how did you know? I'm like, no one writes like this. Like not even native speakers, we don't write like this. So I think, like giving them extra points for that authentic writing is so, and it's so valuable. So those are really good thoughts for sure. Okay, so mock poster presentations, again, pretty much what it sounds like. So this is when students present information they have either researched or studied to their professors and classroom peers. And so professors and students should have rubrics, and they can serve as raters for the various presentations and posters that students are giving. And so it allows students to practice speaking in English about their field, and also gives students practice listening to presentations and writing on the rubrics and feedback. How many of you have done this? Anybody? Nobody? One? Cool, awesome. Okay, so these are some examples from this very university, okay? So this first one is actually, I think from a cybersecurity class or something, I don't know, or a math class, I'm not sure. It was actually a Chinese class, but she did, this is also something we call a gallery walk. I don't know if anyone's done this before. So her students, she had 8 groups of students, and they each were presenting on a different topic, and before the presentations, the students walked around, observed each other's posters, and wrote questions for the upcoming presentation. So then they already had some questions for the students. And so that was how she utilized that. And she said it's been successful, and she's used it before, or since then. And then this was in a machine learning class where the students were in groups. They were in the same groups the entire semester. And then at the end of the semester, they presented on one paper with their group, and each of the groups presented in English to me and Dr. Gao, the professor who was leading that class, and we were their raters, and then they had peer raters as well, and that was part of their final grade in that class. And it really modeled, they had like professional posters made, and it really modeled like a conference presentation like they probably will give at some point in their career. So that was a really cool, authentic practice that the students did. And so again, I'm wondering, do you think this could work? Is this something you thought about doing? You said you've done it in your class. Would you mind sharing about that?
It was really fun. I broke them down into groups in 4. And they have to create like a Canva poster. So we don't have to even write or interpret anything. We just kind of spend like 15-20 minutes doing it. And then I divided them, so within their groups I divided them into 2 pairs. And I said 2 will sit and present your Canva poster on your desk. The students from different groups will have to walk. And the other 2 will be the researchers, where they will actually go to the different 6-7 groups, gain information, write it down, and then report back when everybody is on. They really enjoyed it because we had like 20-25 minutes, maybe even 30 minutes of constant discussions, conversations, and they had to use English because the research it was in English and the posters were in English as well. So it was very engaging, but it was in the spur of the moment. It was not like a final presentation. It was just like a mini mock poster in class.
Yeah, I love that. That's so like just interactive, and also I love a spontaneous, because that helps them really practice those skills. So, and I like that all the students had jobs. This is so essential. I would always make students have jobs for everything they did. So yeah, that's really great. So yeah, thank you for sharing. I appreciate
but
that.
I was really surprised how many of them said, I've never used Canva before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm like, wow,
Oh my God.
I thought you guys use it all the time.
Yeah, no, I feel like it's a cool hip, slides presentation now. So I'm just now integrating, but that is surprising. Does anyone find any barriers maybe to doing this in your class? to have like poster presentations or to have mock poster presentations. So you said you did that spontaneously, kind of just like in class using Canva. Dr. Gao did this like more formally as an end of term project. Has anyone wanted to do something like this? What do you find are barriers to doing things like this in your class?
I usually just using like a mock presentation instead of poster presentation. But poster presentation maybe you need to put everything in one poster, and it might be more challenging for those presentations. So maybe I'll try those, because previously I think they just went through everything and they didn't have a big picture. And the poster actually you need to organize it within one slide, and I think that might be helpful. So I never tried those. I just using a mock presentation, but I think mock poster presentation maybe I'll try.
Okay. And you're saying you might try it because it's like it forces the students to condense the information more strategically.
Yeah, sometimes the student just keep reading.
Yes.
And it's so boring. And
So
it's
boring.
Time consuming also.
Yeah.
So if we can just ask them to present in one poster, maybe we'll minimize time.
Right, and the good thing about poster presentations, or even having them do it on their laptops, is that they can all present basically at once, or like you can have them rotate, which is really effective, more time effective. And then that movement of students, it's more they have to interact with one another. And did you have them did they have to have like a worksheet or something they had to fill out? So yes.
Because at the end of the day, you always have to ask yourself like which students will actually do the work, which are just kind of hanging along.
Yeah.
But the worksheet kind of created that barrier, or I should say on my side, but we're able to actually write the information.
Exactly. So they had like a structure. Everyone was doing a task, which is beautiful.
I think we can combine with the talent. I mean, if you
true.
each one poster
Yeah.
one section, and they can just reply to that.
That's
poster.
true. Yeah. I guess too, if you're doing like an online class, that is a way you could have them do a mock poster presentation as well. Yeah, that's great. Those are really good ideas. I love that. Okay. All right. So this is an information gap activity. So this is for students to communicate about information that was previously unknown to the other person, but it's about the same topic. So what do I mean by that? Okay, so for example, the class is paired up, so everyone has a pair, okay? And one partner in each pair is partner A, the other is partner B. Okay, and all the students that are partner A are given a sheet of paper with the timetable on it, and the timetable is filled in halfway, but some of the boxes are empty on the timetable. But then partner B are given a sheet of paper with the timetable on it, but the boxes that are empty on partner A's timetables are filled in on partner B's timetables. And so there are also empty boxes on partner B's timetable, but they are filled in partner A. So they each have like corresponding information, but missing information that also corresponds. So let me show you an example. Well, okay, but before I do that, so the partners, they have to work together to communicate, to ask each other about those missing pieces of information in these various boxes. And so, for example, they might receive some sort of table, right, that has like different, so this is like an example, it's like a environmental field study. Are we okay back there? Okay, we're all good. We're good. We're up. We're good. Okay. So this is an example, a data table from an environmental field study. And so the students are told they have to fill in the missing data through conversation with their partner, right? So it could even be like, okay, you pretend you're two colleagues, you have to communicate to exchange this information, right? And so, they'd have to figure out, how do I get these pieces of information? How do I ask them in English, right? So you can make this as hard or as simple as you want it to, but it is a way to get students to communicate using English in that medium of instruction. And so, for instance, So the students would work in pairs, again, to ask for and provide the missing information. They can't show each other their sheets, and they must use spoken English to clarify and record the correct values. So again, you're gonna have to make sure your students don't cheat somehow. But you could even have them line up like in 2 lines or something, and then have them communicate like sort of like a speed interview type of situation. And so you could even provide language support, right? Like you could provide some questions, sample questions that they could ask, like what was the pH level for River A, or can you repeat that? Or let me confirm, you said 6.8, right? How do you spell turbidity, right? So giving them questions that you think they'll ask anyway or would need to ask. And instead of them having to resort to their, most commonly spoken language, like Mandarin or whatever other languages they might speak, they can have, you could say, oh, you have this language support on the board, and so you can use these questions if you need them. And even you could provide sentence stems for the answer, like the pH level is, or you could provide these kind of professional structures so that they will know how to respond appropriately. Okay, and so then after completing the table, you could even ask the students to analyze the data together if you want to extend that activity. So you could have them ask like which river appears more polluted and why? What might explain the differences in turbidity, and then have them write a short field report summary together that they could email you, or something, like have it be as more, like you could extend as much as you want, you could have the different platforms you use, you could change that up as you see fit. So yeah, okay, so I don't know, we don't really need to talk about that. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I wanted to give you guys some chance to have some takeaways. Okay. So before we do takeaways, I wanted to talk about some real challenges that you might have in your classes regarding using English as the medium of instruction or using this communicative language in your classes, and maybe what could be some ways to overcome them. So first, before we talk about our takeaways, I want to first address that there are really real challenges to doing communicative language in these fields. And so, yeah, let's first discuss. I'll give you guys about, let's do like 3 minutes, and then we'll discuss, and then we'll focus on our takeaways. Okay, so 3 minutes, share with a partner, share in a little group, and then we will discuss together.
What do you think? What do you think?
The main one, of course, is the language barrier for the student. We can assign them more assignments. More assignments to help them overcome the language
More
barrier.
assignments, the more assignment, the more they can get. Something.
But they have to get the score, they have to get the credit.
Yes, but your course is great.
Graduate student.
Yeah, it's a change for English.
Oh yes, for everybody is unless it's a
Actually, it's good. Can you protect your students if they use
It's okay for them to use OpenAI. I encourage them to use it, but they have to understand the content and they have understand whether the something is correct or not. Usually the AI might do some errors or mistakes inside. I think it's okay because I think local students, the writing is poor, but AI tools can help them when generate good content. I think it's okay. Yes.
But I think not with OpenAI, maybe we can use Grammarly or something else. So they can
Grammarly just can.
only plus.
Yes, correct.
Yes. But it's very important to them share the idea, not the OpenAI idea.
What if you get the idea is OpenAI, ChatGPT can help you generate
Yeah.
based on the ideas, create some contents.
ChatGPT can stimulate.
That's a generated, so you can generate some
Depends on the prompt we input. I try some prompt and they give the different response. I think it's still many bias. I have many bias.
Bias. Oh, many bias.
I have compared OpenAI to DeepSeek and I think OpenAI is still the best, but if we more ask the tip about our tool, especially in cybersecurity. It's not a tip and just the same response. What do you think?
It's possible because some of my students say if they want to do coding, they will use this AI, but if for research paper, it's possible because every AI model they are trained differently, so they can use all the tools. They can compare the best.
What do you feel? What your research area? What's your research?
My research is in deep learning, medical imaging, and computer language.
Bioengineering.
Medical imaging analysis
Oh,
and computer
I never
vision.
seen it in mine, but I guess it was focused on medical imaging.
Medical.
From the lung image
CT,
scan, yes.
microscopy image analysis.
You use the real image or data set?
We have first hand experience. They are all real.
Oh, yes.
All because medical patients are all real data sets. First hand public data set, private data set. We have a lot of private data set and we also have tried real model in public data set.
Collaborate with TMD.
All right, so let's just wrap this up. Okay, so we were having a very interesting discussion up here. I don't know what other people were talking about, but we were discussing how sometimes it can be difficult for students to understand one another in class, or even for, as a professor, understanding your students can be difficult if they have a different dialect or they have a different pronunciation pattern that you're not used to. And we were just talking about how that people who speak English as another language now outrank native English speakers. And so just remembering that English is, that you're speaking world English, that you are also changing the language, and that's a very beautiful thing. And we were talking about, kind of creating that as part of your classroom culture, that you really tell students that this language is yours, and also we might not all understand each other, and so we have to use other methods to really go go far and really work hard to understand one another. I think that's such a really beautiful thing to discuss in your classes and to think about. Okay, so So we don't have a ton of time, but I just wanted to, acknowledge that there are real issues and that, it really takes a collaborative space to try to figure out what the best methods are to overcome them. So finally, though, I want to talk about, let's see, where are we now? We already did that, okay. So I'm just wondering what type of practices you might want to try. Maybe what type of communicative language practices you might want to try. I don't know why my screen is being so little right now. Okay. Maybe I just have to make it big. Okay. So, just if we want to share a little bit, maybe based on this workshop, 1 to 2 practices you might want to try in your classes or future classes. I'll give you just a few minutes to do that. Mock poster, email, interview. Okay, cool. Send the summary to professor. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of this. Using posters with group research. Simple way, understand question and answer, try more clarification. Interview, even though they might just be chatting, true. Email the professor, manager, mock poster presentation. Mock poster presentation. Oh, I'm excited. I want to come to all of these. Please invite me. I would love to join. Anybody else? Well, I hope that this will be effective for you. I'm very excited to hear how it goes, and I want to know, especially about the student emails, what could happen. We could have an email revolution where students are sending us actual professional emails. It would be a beautiful thing. But I also want to say that where the students might just be chatting, I think, we talked a lot about how some of these methods are not common for students, or it's really kind of pushes them outside of their comfort zone. We can see even amongst ourselves that it pushes some of you outside of your comfort zone. And so I think we can have some grace on students, but also remember that, you're creating this classroom culture, right? And so some of it is just, even if they're just talking with each other, it could help to build some comfort in speaking, which is a huge part of speaking, especially in another language. It's just that comfort and that confidence. So part of it is really building the confidence for students and then working their way up to doing mock posters, doing things that, are more intense and, in front of other people. And so, I think that's great. Oh, okay, and so someone said they want to try email your professor, but you guys have a final project. Okay. Oh, okay, this is interesting. Wait, let me click on this before we go. We will discuss the progress every week, then after that they will send me the email. That's great. Yeah, so I hope that you gained something that you could use that can be of practical value to your class and maybe enhance some of the communicative methods that your students are using. And just remembering that it really is a journey. It's a progression of communication is so important. Okay, and then I think my final bit that I have is if you guys have any questions, you can submit questions up here or just ask me. Any questions, any thoughts? okay, maybe we'll just have everyone submit one question or one idea, one thought that you have from this presentation. Okay. Sometimes we call it, does anybody do muddiest point? Like, what was the most confusing thing? Sometimes people do that with their students. What was the muddiest point that you had? The least clear. You don't have to roast me too hard, though. You know, you can just go easy. I mean, you know, it's whatever. Okay.
How do you evaluate students? Because there are so many things.
How do you evaluate students?
Yes, there are some like emails.
Emails. Well, okay, yeah, that's a good question. When you have so many activities, how are you evaluating them? So for lower stakes activities, like a do now, where they have to, you know, sign in, or like maybe an exit ticket where they have to send you an email. A lot of those would be, I mean, it varies based on what your grading system is, but a lot of it would be like participation points is what I would do. So it wouldn't be graded on necessarily the, you know, it doesn't have to be a perfect email, but it's like, okay, did you really fill it out? And are you really making the effort? Then okay, you get the participation points for the day. And maybe there are a variety of points that they would get per day. You know, it just really varies on your grading strategy. But I would usually give, like kind of neutral participation points that are not as based on the like, it doesn't have to be 100% correct, but it's just like, did they really show up? Did they speak? Did they write? Did they do that? And then also, like, you know, a lot of it is also personally for me as the instructor, like just, you know, how it's helping me to understand what do they actually know. But so I think just giving those points is useful. I don't know what your guys' grading system is like, so if you're able to kind of create that, work it in. I don't know.
We just do it based on our impression.
On your impression. I mean, yeah, I think you're going to get an impression if they email you and it's really bad, then your impression will be, yeah, that's not, you didn't really participate. If you get an email and it's ChatGPT, you know, but hopefully not, you know, for the final project, it's not just an impression or whatever, but I think for some of those things, yeah, you can know, like, okay, is this student? And over time, you really build that culture and you understand this student, they might answer differently from this other student, but they're both trying, you know, and so I could always tell, oh, this student is like phoning it in today. But again, it depends on how many students you have, so it's just so variable. I'm sorry, it's kind of a muddy answer to your question. How often can you use in one semester? How often can you use what? Like any of these things? Oh, like I mean, I guess, like for a poster presentation or for any, I mean, I think I would use some of these strategies like in every class, but I wouldn't use all of them in every class. But there are some things that I would do, like I would always do a do now with students. So like in my writing class, my students always knew every single class, they come to class, they sit down, they have a writing activity, they have to start right away. And it's like a 5-minute activity and it's informal, they're not like formally graded on it. But it was like they knew every time. They knew there was an exit ticket every single class, you know? So there was a structure that I built in every class where it was very communicative. Students knew they'd have to have a partner. They'd turn and talk to their partner at some point. They'd share with the class. There'd be some, but like I would always have this structure. There's an entry point in the classroom where they do a do now. There's an exit ticket where at the end they sum up what they learned or they tell me what their muddiest point was or whatever. And then within that structure, we would change. Sometimes we do a flipped classroom where the students had to present on information they learned instead of me lecturing on it. Or they had to do a poster presentation and we did a gallery walk. Like those things would change, but I would try to have an interactive activities every time. Any other questions or thoughts? Oh my God, this is, you know, this is my first time really using Mentimeter, so thank you. Oh, confused, yeah. Thank you for sticking with me, okay. I also sometimes get a little confused in my presentations, so thank you so much for coming. No, okay, wait, do we have any more? Oh my God, we have more. Okay. Some students are too shy to ask questions. This website, Mentimeter? Yeah, you guys could use Mentimeter if you want. I agree. I found when I don't know, is anyone doing online classes? But I love Nearpod. When I've done online workshops for professors around Taiwan, and you guys love Nearpod, and you'll answer all this stuff on Nearpod. So I think some of these tools are very effective in this environment. Using rubrics for evaluating. I don't know why this is a question because yes, I love this, okay? It's yes, using rubrics for evaluating, period. Yes, I always, for my writing activities, for poster presentations, I would always have rubrics, and I would have the students evaluate the rubrics before, and I would love to use rubrics to have them evaluate, I'd have them look at example, writing samples or other things so that they could really understand the rubric. Are people using rubrics here in their classes? Rubrics? Rubric. Amazing. Yeah, rubrics are great. Did anyone want to add on to this question? What did you want to know exactly?
How to design rubrics.
How to design rubrics. Well, I think you'll have to come to another workshop for that. So we're a bit out of time for that. But yeah, I would, or you could come to a consultation. We've sometimes helped and supported professors in writing rubrics or evaluating their rubrics. Actually, for the mock poster presentation, I did help her write a rubric for that. So yeah, please come to our consultations. That's a way you can write your rubrics. Thank you for asking. I am, I'm not a big sports girl, but I am a LeBron fan. Even though he abandoned us. And yeah, the Cavs, definitely. Cleveland. Okay, Cleveland rocks. Is there any activity I would like to implement but haven't yet? I gotta think about it. It's different in this environment. Okay, we only have 1 minute left, so I'm gonna let you guys go. I know you're very busy. But thank you so much for coming again today. I so appreciate your time and your effort. Please feel free to contact me should you ever want to, and we're happy to support you. Why I made too many? Okay, yeah. Please reach out. Please email me. Please set up a consultation if you so desire. They're free. We're just here to support you. Me and my colleague Nate, we're both here at NTST for you. So it was such an honor. Thank you for coming. Yay! And I have some cards up here too if you want to come take a card.
Yeah, thank you, Kelley. And Cleveland Rock. Yep, we're all from Cleveland. Yeah, so again, as you might see, Kelley just showing like a Professor Gao's poster over there, right? Professor Gao is very smart to using their consultation and also invite them to the classroom. I think that's a smart way to do it. Since right now you guys maybe have a final presentation, maybe you can invite Kelley and Nat to come over and give some critique or talk to the students. And the most important thing is you can using all those consultation for your EMI skill award. Okay, so right now it's opening for EMI teaching skill enhancement award. I start from yesterday to June 13th. So please apply for this award. And usually, according to my statistic, it's about 88% will win this award. So almost everyone will get it. So just try your best. You just need to fill the form and also make a 20 minutes video. And I think that's it. But actually, you will compete with a lot of people. But if you lose that award, didn't get a chance to get the award, it's better you just make appointment with Kelley and Nat for consultation. And then next semester, maybe you will earn the award. Okay. Any questions? No? Thanks, Kelley again. And Kelley and Nat's office is actually in IB 10th floor. you can, when you go out, you will see the Fulbright office. Just take advantage of using this resource also. Okay, bye-bye.